Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast of your host, Charles Kiriakou. Today, I'm joined by Adam Lee from Mobile Rocket. Adam, how are we, my friend?
I'm pretty good. Thank you very much for having me on.
Good stuff. So, Adam, for people that may or may not know who you are, just give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and what you do right now.
Absolutely. So I'm Adam Lee from Mobile Rocket. As a business, we provide like software to help temporary workers. The best way of describing it is anyone's got like high volume temp workers. We do things like onboarding tools, compliance, ID checks, all the way through like shift manager, and the timesheet function. So it's all driven through the mobile app as well, which is the key thing. Our main sector is recruitment. We're massive in recruitment, or we believe we're massive in recruitment. And then obviously the other sectors we deal with is the NHS and volunteering as well. So yeah.
Love it. So, yeah, we'll talk a lot about that towards the end as well, and you can tell people how to get in touch with you, etc., etc. But look, there's a few topics that we're going to talk about today. But when I first reached out to yourselves and I spoke to Nick, your marketing director, we obviously jumped on a Zoom call like this, talked about kind of what topics we could potentially discuss.
Yeah.
And I think rather than me explain to the viewers and listeners, this is the types of things we're going to talk about, I just want to say one word and it will be adversity. This whole episode will be predominantly around adversity. We're going to dive into your story as well, both setting the business up, the challenges, but also your personal story where you've had to overcome some serious adversity. And before we clicked record, Adam, I said to you that I think in terms of the value to be offered here to recruiters, business owners, people setting up businesses, recruitment's just full of adversity. And I've said this to recruiters pretty much every single time I'm in person with them, that every single day in recruitment is like being metaphorically kicked in the face and flatlined, and it's your job to then get back up again and get going. So that'll be the main thing we'll talk about. But I'll just hand it over to you then, Adam. So talk us through your personal story before going on to what you're doing now. Obviously, that the adversity piece and stuff. Tell us about your story.
So going back from school, if you like, really started back then. I wasn't the most academic in school. I was a very creative person. I was design. I always loved design and art. And then really I left school with one GCSE, and thought, right, I need to kind of do something about this. But I was very good at being creative and very good at art and design. So I went to college, and joined college and started doing my GMVQ in graphic design. And I loved it. I found something, I clicked with it. I really enjoyed it,
Mm,
really loved it. And did that for the first year and another year and another year, so for 3 years in total. In that time, it was interesting because I found out I was definitely dyslexic at college, not at school. So
mm,
it's probably part of the reason, if you like, what kind of I wasn't the most academic at school for
mm,
maybe all that reason, but definitely contributed towards it. But you know what? I kind of think I always knew I was in some
mm,
degree, and kind of, you know what, I kind of enjoy the fact I am because it brings a lot of kind of unique thinking to the way I approach things as well. So, went to college, did pretty well at college, did really well. I think I really enjoyed it, found the real kind of foundation of what I wanted to do for potentially the rest of my life. And then went to university.
mm,
And university was, university's awesome. You go to university, it's good fun. And you're obviously trying to learn. And really enjoyed university, did graphic design at university. And thoroughly enjoyed that process. Obviously, this gets into kind of the story where I probably kind of changed my thought process a little bit
mhm,
in life to a degree. And I think it was my second year at university. I was probably a little bit stupid, really. I found a lump, and being a man, I didn't kind of, do anything about it that I should have done
mm,
as I should have done. And ended up going to the doctors and found out I had cancer, which was a bit of a shock to the system.
mm.
At the age of 20, so I was 20 years old at that time.
Wow.
Uh, which was, yeah, it was definitely definitely different. And then kind of, you know, went through that process of,
Mm,
getting told by the doctor, he basically called me a stupid boy is the words he used, to be
mm,
fair. I should have gone a lot sooner. I didn't. So I started kind of like, going through the process, had an operation. I went through the process of, doing some of the therapy, radiotherapy, and did that, for a period of time. And it spread as well at that time. So
mm,
it went beyond the air it was in, it spread, and then that was like a real interesting time.
mm,
And when you're in that space at that time, it's really weird because everyone else around us, they must be in a worse position, I think, than you because you're just going
Mm,
through it. It's when you look at my mum and dad and my family around me were fantastic. I had the support from the university and everything else. But yeah, kind of got through that process, and that really shaped, I think, and changed a lot of the way I think I approach life now, and even over the last like 20 years, that I've
mm,
really kind of changed the way I approach certain things.
mm,
Um, because you look at it and go, well, if once you've been through that and you've had that, you've gone through that process, and you weren't sure if you were, in all honesty, you weren't sure if you were going to live.
mm,
Um, I mean, I think the worst point in that was, there's a lot of positives come out of it as well. But the worst point was when you're writing your own will at a young age of like 20, you're not sure what's going to happen. My 21st birthday was my first radiotherapy. So that's what I did my 21st.
blimey.
I wasn't partying. I wasn't doing that at that time. But got through that process, had to accept it, and kind of, there's a lot of people that, it's not unique to that, but you have to kind of just had to get on with it, had to get through it. And lucky enough, really, I managed to get through that kind of, that time,
Mm,
and then left university, and then kind of thought, right, what am I going to do? And that's when I went on the
mm,
path of, after that point in time, probably not straight away, maybe after a year or two, I probably realized I could be a bit more risky with things because
mm,
my process was always, well, you were there and you didn't know if you were going to make it. So like, what does it matter if you try
mm,
and you fail? Just do it because like
mm,
at that point your mindset's totally shifted or minded. But yeah, it was an experience. I think it made me a lot stronger as a person. And from that point onwards, I looked at life a lot different. In the sense of you just got to be positive. You just got to go for it. You've got to be a
mm,
go-getter. You've got to go out there and try things. But yeah, it definitely changed my life. But for me personally, in a good way as well, because it made me the
mhm,
person I am, I think, today. And over the last kind of say 10, 15, 20 years, it's definitely
mm,
get my decision making to be a bit more riskier and think,
mm.
just try something. And if you fail, you fail. And if you fail, you get back up. And if you don't, you just keep going.
Mm, mm. It's so interesting. So I've said this on the podcast a few times that my mum's a cancer survivor. She had breast cancer. I think I was about 10 years old when she broke the news to us, and she had a mastectomy that went wrong. She had to have the surgery multiple times. It was a really rough time.
Yeah,
And obviously taking her to hospital, going to hospital with her, and being in the chemotherapy lounge and stuff, you meet other cancer patients. And
yeah,
what I find quite interesting is it's never there's barely ever any middle ground with how they are. They're either one way or the other. They're either really positive. They're going to beat this. Like they're going to have grab life by the reins and go right. Let's go. I've got a second chance. Or you get people that get really resentful. Why
yeah.
has this happened to me? And even after they've beaten it, they're like, I can't believe. Like you, for example, your attitude could simply have been. My 21st birthday, all my mates were out partying and I was there having like radiotherapy, chemotherapy. Like, why has this happened to me? So
Yeah.
interesting how like certain people have this perspective. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
100%, yeah. And I think you kind of do think, why has it happened? But at the same time, you've got to go, do you know what? How am I going to kind of am I going to turn it around and make it something positive?
Mm,
What can come out of it? And I remember speaking to doctors even then, and they were saying, well, what do you want? They were talking about what you want to do next. So they were even trying to make you think, push you on what you're going to do next. But for me, to be fair, I always kind of had a bit of, I want to push myself anyhow. I was always a bit
hmm
like that to make sure I wanted to achieve everything from
mm,
school where I felt I was a bit, probably in reality, a bit of a failure from school to doing really well at college to you loving
mm,
university and the kind of courses I was doing and thinking, do you know what, how can I take this to the next level? So for me, yeah, you have to embrace it. You have to go, do you know what, I've had that, it's great. How's that going to kind of, how's that going to
mm,
change your life now? You can't do anything about it.
mm,
So move forward and be happy you're here, be grateful you're here. And just if you want to do something and build whatever you want to build, just build it. And
mm,
so what if you fail? Just do it.
mm, mm. Do you think you had this kind of attitude prior to that event happening in your life? And the reason why I'm asking this is because a lot of founders of recruitment businesses bring this up with me about certain things that can't be taught, like the element of having grit, the bounce back ability, and just obviously various other things as well. Certain things people believe you can't necessarily learn. And I always believe that it very much depends on how you've been brought up and
Yeah.
life events, in it, for example, what's happened to you. And obviously you've taken it that direction. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I think, well, my upbringing was absolutely awesome. I have to just, you have to just push on. You have to do
Mm,
it. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, to some degree, you've got to think, what is life? You know, it's a difficult one to answer really, but the way I'd answer it is probably to look at it and go, "Mm, you've got to push forward. You've got to keep
mm,
going. You've got to keep
mm,
moving. It's yes, you can't learn everything. Not everything can be taught to a degree, and something you've got to have the grit to kind of determination to do things. There's no doubt
mm,
about it. And before I had it, I suppose to a degree, I had a bit of that anyhow, because I always kind of, liked kind of selling and liked kind of designing. I always had a bit of that about me.
mm,
When you've had that, that changed my kind of definitely changed my thought process to be
mm,
more like that, if you like. So I was definitely pushed
mm.
more doing that.
Yeah, yeah, because whenever I go into a new business, like external and consulting, and one of the founders will sit me down and say like, so what are your thoughts on certain people? Based on people's ability to bounce back and crack on in the face of adversity, that's like my biggest thing these days, where I look at a recruiter and I go, I don't think they're going to make it. I really don't. And if they do make it in recruitment, I feel like they might need to go and work with a bigger business with all the processes already put in place, where they spend the first year just sourcing on the big accounts, like they've got Apple or Google as an account, where it's kind of not easy because nothing's easy in life, but
Yeah.
they don't have to, especially in a startup environment, which is the predominantly who I work with,
Yeah.
those types of people, I just feel like they're just not right for this industry, to be honest.
Yeah, startup is, it's difficult, isn't it, again, because you've got to have determination. If you start a business, you've got to be determined to kind of
Mm,
do it. You've got to be prepared to fail. You've got to be prepared to make a lot of mistakes.
mm,
You've got to be prepared to kind of, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and just carry on with the next day. And I think
mm,
that's the thing. You've got to kind of come into work every day and go, whatever happened yesterday, just how do I get a bit above that? How do I keep
mm,
pushing myself the next step? And I do that still today. I still do that year by year. I try and set myself goals
mm,
and challenges to help myself kind of really achieve and push myself forward.
mm.
Uh, but yeah, I think if entrepreneurship, if you like, and that kind of is like I always struggle with that kind of that words thing. I'm never there. You're never there. I'm always
Mm,
I always think, well, Richard Branson's like an entrepreneur. You're kind of building yourself to be something type of thing.
yeah.
But we're all on that journey. If you run a business, you're on that journey. But yeah, it's such a tough thing. There's no
Mm,
doubt, it's difficult thing.
yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that, Adam, because I had a lady called Gemma on the podcast recently. And I think towards the end of the podcast, she said, it's really good to speak to like-minded entrepreneurs like yourself. And I just kind of went, all
It's
right, like that. Because in my
feel
mind, I'm
yeah.
just like, I'm an external coach slash trainer that goes into businesses. Yes, I've done this all by myself. I've been doing the podcast all by myself, but like, there's that little voice in the back of my head that goes, "You're not that yet." Like you said, you're not Richard Branson. Like,
Exactly the same. I've got people. You look up to people like Richard Branson, different entrepreneurs, and you think they're the entrepreneurs. And I'm still, which I am. Everyone's learning, everyone's kind of
mm,
progressing, trying to move, and I'm in the same boat as that. We're running it like as a business, like a 2 million like pound business, but for me,
mm,
we're still very small, obviously. But it's kind of like, how do you keep pushing yourself? And it's like,
mm,
I always think that word's a funny one because, like, one day you might kind of be there, but not yet. So you're kind of working
mm.
towards being that entrepreneur. And look, I know you've got to look up to people as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's so important to have role models and
Yeah,
people to kind of look up to. That's for sure. Well, going back to what you were saying there before, because I do want to talk about like how you've set goals and your milestones that you've achieved and things like that. I think that'd be really, really useful for people.
yeah,
But during that time where you had gone through cancer, had gone
yeah.
through this diagnosis, and you were telling me before about how doctors were. I might be misquoting here, but either saying that you're just done or like you've got a certain amount of time. I don't know what the actual situation was, but you know, you were able to bounce back, but through those really like tricky days, those really dark days, like what did you learn about yourself during those times?
You know what? The funniest thing is, it's a bit of a blur, and the reason it's a blur is because you
Mm.
probably focus on the people around you than yourself.
That's
Well,
interesting.
because when you're in that situation, you're focused on the people around you who you feel you've hurt to some degree, and you think, well, that's
Mm,
you focus a lot of time on them, and then all you really, for me personally, when I went through it, all I was doing was going through the day. I was going through the process. I was getting told what to do when I'm
mm,
going. therapy, right? You're getting radiotherapy today, you're doing this, you're going for this scan, you're doing a body scan. I just went through that process of getting told what to do and when. So I just did that. And the
Mm,
thought process was you just get up, just go, just you do it, just get on with it. And
mm,
but for me, it was mainly around the people around me that I
mm,
was more, it wasn't about yourself. It was more about, how this is difficult for them. This is a tough place for them because I suppose at the time you don't really know what the next year, two, three looks
mm,
like, if at all. You don't know.
mm.
So it's a difficult. It's not so much from a personal kind of perspective. Yeah, I looked a lot from how's it affecting everyone else.
Mm. Yeah, I think I've heard a few people say that. I mean, I've not necessarily had a thing like that myself personally, but I think not necessarily the worst thing, but one thing that happened to me, I think in 2017, and the reason why I'll explain this will make sense in a second, but um, having ADHD, one of my biggest issues when I was growing up was I just was never on time for anything. My first job in recruitment was a mile away from my office, Adam. I still managed to
Right.
be late. I was dreadful, right? So everything was lastminute.com, just dreadful. And one day it was March 2017. There was ice and snow still on the road from the week where it'd been snowing. Silly me, left the house with 10 minutes to get to the station. It's like a 15-20 minute walk. I'm just like, right, what's going on? Got the bus, and there was so much traffic at this junction. I thought, right, I'll get off this bus and I'll just run to the station to catch the next train because I was in such a
Yeah.
rush. And I looked left, looked right, and a van had tried to skip the red light and it hit me. And it was like, you hear in the movies about everything being in slow motion.
Yeah.
I remember like very vividly in slow motion going, fuck, have I just been hit by a fucking van? And I've just gone flying, hit my head on the floor. My headphones, luckily that were on, had saved me from having that solid impact. And then I skidded all along the side with my old jacket's got like burn marks all the side of it. And these three Polish laborers ran over to me and was like, oh my God, are you okay? And I looked at them, I stood straight back up, got my headphones, went, that was a bit silly, wasn't it? Obviously, the
Yeah.
adrenaline running through
Yeah.
my
Kicking
veins. And I
in.
was
Yeah.
just like, the bus driver then gets out, goes, oh my God, someone called 999. And I was just like, mate, I'm fine. I'm literally running late to work. He was like, you've just been hit by a van. The van's like parked over there. I've waved to the van to be like, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm late, I need to get into work. If I'm late again, I'll have a disciplinary. Everyone on that bus was just like, you need to go to hospital. And I was like, man, I'm fine, just leave me alone. So I crossed the road and I started walking and I'm like, right, I'll call my director because I've missed this train now. And then the adrenaline starts to wear off and the reality starts to
Yeah.
sink
Yeah.
in and you go, oh shit, like
Just
that could have been
yeah.
a heck of a
No,
lot worse.
like,
Oh my God. And then as soon as the pain kicked in, I've never felt anything quite like that before. There's jolt of pain all across my shoulder. And I sat in McDonald's, and this is like a faith in humanity restored kind of moment. There was this I think he was like Jamaican or something, and he saw me sat there and I was covered in like water, obviously, because I'd just been like rolled around in the snow and the ice. And he came up to me and was like, "You're right, mate." And I just sat there, I was like, "I've just been hit by a van and the pain is starting to get like really, really intense."
then,
And he
yeah.
just screamed at everyone and said, "Someone get call a fucking ambulance. This man's been hit by a car." And he went, "Right, breathe with me. Look at my eyes, breathe. Where's the fucking ambulance?" Like that. And then I just burst into tears because it hit me that
Yeah.
fuck, man,
Yeah.
that had
Yeah.
happened. And I'd have to I text like my close friends and family. And the reason why I'm kind of bringing this up with you now is kind of similar what you just what you said there is when I was in the ambulance, it kind of just hit me that my whole life I've just been rushing to get to point A to point B without being really in the moment, and that just in a click of a fingers, if I was a few inches further, I would have just been trampled over by a 2-ton van and just gone
It's
because I was late for work.
yeah. Yeah. It's mad, isn't it? That is mad. Yeah. I mean, it's like you say, it's just crazy. The adrenaline kicking in must have been an experienced mind of doing that. And, thinking about McDonald's and thinking to yourself, like you say, that's just happened. So
Mm.
was anything broken or anything like that? Or you okay after that? Or was it just,
I've still got a dodgy shoulder,
right?
but they never done any. I don't think they done. No, they did an X-ray and said you're really lucky that you've not broken anything, but you've got a very minor concussion and you've got bruised bones, and bruised bones suck. But they never did an MRI, and my shoulder and my neck have been screwed ever since. But when I was in the waiting room waiting for my friend to come pick me up, there was this like 84-year-old lady, and she was like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I just got hit by a van." And she looked at me and was just like, "Oh my goodness, you're so young, you're very lucky, blah blah blah." And I was just like, "What are you here for?" And she was just like, she just smiled at me and she was like, "I'm dying." And I looked at her, I was like, "Sorry, what?" And she was just like, "I'm 84 years old, I'm at peace with this now, but I'm terminally ill and I'm just here to do some treatment." And I just, again, it was an emotional day for me. I just burst out to tears and I just looked at her and she was just like, she literally looked at me and she just said, "Don't take anything for granted."
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
all. And coming from a dying old lady, she was like, just don't take anything for granted. And it was for me like a big lesson after that was like, don't ru like rushing to work. Like, what are you doing? Just
yeah.
like think about
I
things for a second.
think you're right. I think I say to the guys at work quite a lot on perspective.
Mm,
You put things in perspective sometimes. When I really look at things, and sometimes you can get caught up in work with the stresses and everything else. But
mm,
when you look at perspective and you think of people who are going what they're going through, you got to stand back and go, actually, my problems are not that much of a problem. But it's
mm,
difficult when you're in the situation when you're in that problem. But you've got to try and just remember, just have some perspective on the situation. You
mm.
know, really understand. It's difficult, isn't it? When you're in it, it's difficult. But yeah, you say you've got to, perspective's a wonderful thing if you get it right.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to do as well, especially when you're young. Like I think I was, what was that, 2017? That was 6, 7 years ago or something like that. So I was like early 20s. I was like 23 years old. A lot of people I meet that are in their early 20s, perspective is really challenging. Um,
Yeah,
so just before we move on to like your kind of milestones in your business and stuff like that, because I think this is a really, really important conversation and hopefully people take some things away from this.
but
But
yeah, yeah,
if a recruiter or a business owner or whoever it is that's listening to this,
yeah,
sometimes people might not necessarily have had a lot of difficult things happen in their life. And it's quite difficult if you haven't had those experiences to develop that skill or that muscle of the adversity and the perspective.
yeah.
What advice would you give people who maybe have had an all right life, but like want to get more resilient, want to have more bounce back ability? What advice would you give them?
It's a tough one as well. I mean, advice to that is, I mean, you've got to look at your end goal, what you're trying to achieve, and then just keep
Mm,
fighting towards that end goal. Put your picture in mind, what you're trying to do. Imagine you've had nothing happen to you, or you just focus on your goal and have a yearly goal, or even a
mm,
5 year, whatever it may be. I do that. It's every year. I've always got a goal to look at and think, what am I going to achieve this year?
mm,
It's a focal point. It's a focal point to hit something, and if you've got a focal point, you just got to keep pushing to hit that goal all the time. I know as a
mm,
team, we do it every day, we do it every week, we do it every
mm,
year. We get together. You've got to have a focal point. So that's the key thing. If you're trying to do something, how do I get to that point? I need to push myself, like push myself more and kind of really go for
mm,
it. Have a goal in mind. So we have goals. We have like
mm,
goals we hit. Ours might be annual recurring revenue goal. It might be product. It might
mm,
be client. Whatever it may be. You've got to have a goal to say we want more happy clients by this point in
mm,
time. We want more product by this point, and just keep pushing yourself. It's a difficult one because you have to push yourself all the time. If
mm,
you're in business and you've set up in business, I think you've got that anyhow to a degree because you've got
mm,
some spark to go. If you've set it up and you're pushing yourself,
mm,
you're gonna keep mentally going, look, how am I going to do this?
mm,
The tough part, and I can relate to it because the tough part was obviously when I first set up in business, it was just me.
mm.
So it's difficult, and it's just you, isn't it? So when you've
Yep.
got building a team, it becomes easier in some ways, and it becomes better with a team. When it's just yourself and you're in a room, I remember being in the first office I ever had, and it was a really very small office. I was like a box,
Mm,
like a desk, and I remember being there at the office, and it's a funny place. It's a lonely place because you're on your own. And how would you motivate yourself? It's very difficult because you have
mm,
days where you're not motivated, and
yeah.
everyone does. Just have them days. This is what it
Mm,
is. Just accept them that I'm not motivated. It's just happening. Just but eventually you go, no, I must do this. Talk to yourself. I must do this. I must achieve this
mm,
next milestone in my life is I need to get sales to the door. I need to achieve that. And that's what you've got to do. That's
mm,
what I first set up. Um, in business, I left, I worked for a few people. I did a few things. I thought I could do it better was the reason really you
mhm,
start doing a business. I could do it a bit better. And you just got to push yourself. And if you think you can do it
mm,
better, and you're sitting behind a desk or you're behind a laptop and you're just trying to crack on with doing something, you've got to motivate yourself because you've got to go, okay, well, I've said to myself I want to do this, and I've said to myself I want to achieve this by the end of the year. Well, no one else is going to make that happen. No one's going to come along and just give you that helping hand. You're going to have to do it. So if you're going to be someone who wants to push himself in business and start a business, you have to push yourself. You've got no other
mm.
option. But don't worry about your off days. Like everyone has the off days.
Do you
That's
know what you've just said there is just it resonates with me so much because my mentality is 100% all the time, and it's just like there's been so many times this year where I've mentally and physically burnt out, and I've sat down and had people on the podcast that are experts in that topic and all the
yeah,
rest of it, and they're like, what you're doing is you're trying to grow your business in seventh gear But what you've
Yeah.
got to realize is when you're pivoting, you can't go around corners at seventh gear, and that's why you're
Yeah.
crashing all the time.
Yeah.
And I get that. And I'm sure you must have had this when you first set up, right? There are certain days where you wake up, you feel like you're hungover, but you've had your 8 hours sleep,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
just feel mentally like you
Yeah.
cannot deal with anything. You don't want to speak with anyone. You have
Yeah.
no motivation to do anything. But what you said, and I wanted to pick up an echo, and something I've been doing recently is on those days where I don't feel 100%, let's say, if I'm like, "Oh, I can't be asked to make these fucking cold calls, or I can't be asked
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
go through and do this email or whatever, I just write down what are the things have to be done. Like
Yeah.
my absolute non-negotiables, right? Okay, I have to update my finance spreadsheet. I have to then go back to the website designer. I have to go and schedule the podcast for next week. Because if that doesn't happen, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
So I have to
Yeah.
do those things. But the
Yeah.
other things that aren't non-negotiable, that are important, but they're not pressing, I'll wait until tomorrow. And the
Yeah.
thing is if what since I've been doing that, and that's so good to hear that you said this as well. It's very rare I have 2 days on the trot now where I'm like, fucking, oh, I can't be
Yeah.
asked. I just don't want to do it. And I
Yeah.
say this to recruiters all the time. Out of the 5 days of your work week,
Mm.
typically most weeks you can have an off day. That's fine. You're a fucking human being. But if you're
Yeah.
having 2, 3, and 4 off days every single week, something's not right and you need to fix it.
But it's not right, and I think you've got to, that for me is and everyone has that. I mean, anyone doesn't say that. I think I think you've got to, you're going to have days where you're a bit you're not as motivated as others. It's
Mm,
going to happen unless you're superhuman. I think that you're going to have that. Just focus on the goal. It's the goal.
mm,
It's for me. It's the goal. I always look back and go, right. Well, I'm not going to achieve that if I might, have an off day or an afternoon or whatever it may be. The next day, you've got to be focused and driven to do it because you've got no other choice. The only person that's going to make that happen is you. So, it's so you have to do it. And that's the motivation. That's the kind of, I'm gonna have to do it. Put my head around it. I'm gonna have to do it. I've had an off day. What's my goal? How am I gonna hit my goal? And then you just for me, you just kind of shake it off and you go, right, how am I gonna
mm,
do it? Just a few small steps at a time and say, break it down and go. Because you can get overwhelmed with the amount of things you've got to do within business. Yeah, you do, and you've got to go, do you know what? If I achieve these three things today, that's a win. I'm gonna leave work feeling good about myself because I've done them
mm,
three things. And the next day I'll tackle the other 100 things, but I'll break
mm.
them down again and again and again. And it's key. You just got to keep doing that. But have
Mm.
the goal, have the vision, have the goal, and just keep pushing towards, getting towards that goal. But have
Yeah.
small goals as well, and I think that's one of the key things we've done as a business, and I think I try to do not just in work, but in my personal life. I try to have
Mm,
goals. It might only be daft things like I want to achieve a family holiday or two family
mm,
holidays, or it might be, we want to. It might be anything. It could be. It might just be time with the family. It might be, I want to have this a Friday off to do X, Y, and Z.
mm,
Whatever it is, you've got to have them goals to do it. Um, but yeah, and I think when you first start out, or when I this I mean I can talk about personal experience. When I first started out, it was really difficult being in that environment.
mm,
And the office I had, I wasn't surrounded by any other kind of businesses at that point. Really, it was a really strange kind of setup to where I was. But then I moved the year after, and then I was in like because I went through the T side, I went through like an incubation process through the university, who
mm,
helped set you up in the sense of they give you cheap office space in effect.
mm,
So in year two, I actually got more of a closer to some more office space, which had other kind of startup businesses around it. So
mm,
that become a bit more helpful because then when you have them moments where you drift off, if you like, you can't focus, I could go speak to other people in the same boat,
mm,
and it's really important to be able to speak to people who are going through the same or similar things. And I think we don't do that
mm.
enough. We push back a little bit on things like that as people. And we kind of always go with it's you don't need the help, and really just accept it. Just have great conversations with great people doing amazing things or trying to, and be positive about that and just share
Mm,
it.
mm.
Everyone's making mistakes. Everyone's learning as they go, and everyone's and then when you achieve the things, make sure you celebrate them well,
Yeah.
and be proud of what you've achieved and what you're achieving. It's very difficult when you're doing it to remember to do them things, but
Mm,
got to do them things.
mm. That's why this podcast has been revolutionary for me because I'm speaking with high achieving recruiters, business owners, founders, and all the rest of it. So just like bouncing ideas off of each other, hearing about people's stories, and every single time I'm just like, fucking hell, I'm actually not alone in this. Do you know what I
Oh,
mean? I'm
I
going
know.
through a similar type of thing
A
because
lot of people,
this is my home office, right? This is where the magic happens, it's where I do everything. And
yeah,
you know, I've got a puppy downstairs. I go downstairs and in between my little breaks between my sprints. But my missus has a full-time job where she
yeah,
hates her job. She's one of those people like hates her job, moans about her job. Everyone in the team's just like, oh God, is it Friday yet? That type of mentality. So whenever I go downstairs, I'm like, right, I've got to put this proposal together. And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, my manager done something. It was well annoying. You're like, right, this is just not, it's not, you have no idea like what the hell is going on with me right now. But that's why this podcast for me is just like, especially in the last few months since I've been doing it, I just feel like, yeah, just like what you were saying there, like if I'm having that off day or if I feel like I'm alone or if I'm having a challenge, like before the call, during the call, after the call, asking questions and learning loads has just been absolutely game changing.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got to do it. You've got to keep speaking to people. I mean, even I try and even this morning, I spoke to someone this morning who's in a very similar industry to me. I reached out to them just because I think it's important just to have conversations and just
Mm,
I had a conversation with them and just I just said it's interesting when you're running a business and trying to push a business forward. You sometimes don't have them avenues to go speak to people.
mm,
And he said the same thing. And he said, I mean, in January next year, we've agreed to meet up and kind of, we're going to share some of the things we do in business now. He does it and how we do it. We're not in competition, but it's good to get people
mm,
around you to share them things and try and get people you can speak to. I suppose to a degree, um, I've managed over the time to find a few people. There's someone called John, who's been really really good to me.
mm,
He started helping me with business probably about 6 7 years ago,
mm,
and he's been an absolute amazing character for me. Even just to bounce ideas off and just tell me when I'm saying I'm going to do something. He looks at me and goes, and let's look at the numbers. Let's make sure this works. You got to have sometimes you got to have you got to have them people around you to discuss things with.
mm,
It's really important to get a handful of people you can like and trust and really kind of build them relationships with as well. But especially
mm,
when you because even though when you start a business you're on your own, and when you build a business you're not on your own because you build an amazing team. But because
mm,
you're at the top of that kind of team, if you like, I don't like
mm,
hierarchy things, but so if you're at the top of that team, you're the CEO. You are alone at some degree because you're the
mhm,
one that has to make sure everything else happens. So you're still in that place, even from
mm,
when it's just me to a team. Until you've got a team, it's a similar
mm.
thing. Yeah,
Mm. What you said earlier about the goal, and I think that was a really good answer actually, because how do you get more resilient? How do you get more bounce back from adversity and stuff? And I think if you do have that long-term goal and you break them down to short-term goals and stuff, if you're getting those setbacks
yeah,
and your goal is actually meaningful, like it's something that you genuinely want to achieve, then unless that goal isn't important, then you're naturally going to want to pick yourself back up again. What I want to
yeah.
know from you is, because I know that you wanted to share some of your milestones and kind of the challenges you had and stuff, but like, do you have like a specific process when you set goals yourself with the team? Is there any sort of methods that you particularly use at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for years, it was me setting goals a lot of the time.
Mm,
I think one of the biggest changes we've just done, in recent years, really, and we've been trying it and trying to get it right, is do it with the team.
hmm
Team are gonna, if you get, then you get we've got an amazing team. I love our
mm,
team. The team's great, but they've got the buy-in, they understand what we're trying to achieve, and they're kind of involved, and they're trying to push for the same things you are. So it's getting that kind of, for me, you've got to get that. I've had an amazing journey of kind of getting that team buy-in over the last few
mm,
years, and that's been key. There's no doubt
mm.
about it.
Yeah. And when you've set your own personal goals, so for me, when I did this with my team and when I did and when I do it myself, I break it down into like five different pillars.
Yeah,
Health, like health body goals, mindset, like how I'm going to improve my mindset, my mental health, that type of stuff, finances, business, and relationships as well. So
yeah,
like what am I doing with my partner, with my family, all that type of stuff. And then I break it down and sometimes it will just be as simple as, book a comedy club with the missus or, meet my mum twice this
right.
month.
You're
Like
right. Yeah, yeah, you're right.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
little ones like that. But then for bigger ones, like so this is like just gone past my 1 year anniversary setting the business up. It was like, right, here's the financial target. how many clients do I need? And then it's like actually physically breaking down that thing. Same thing with the podcast as well, like really breaking it down, understanding what the goal is, where I'm
Yeah.
currently at, where I want to go with it, what will I do, what can I do, and what's going to stop me, and doing like a full-blown analysis of those types of goals. Do you have like a similar type of thing, or is there anything else that you
I mean,
could typically do?
absolutely. I split the goals out is what you've done there. I have my personal goals and I have my personal goals and I have my kind of my work kind of goals.
Mm,
But personal goals might just be like you say, spending more time, a date night, wherever it may be.
mm,
I mean, I've got three amazing kids. I've got an amazing
mm,
wife. In reality, puts up with me because that's how it is.
mm,
And with work, you've got to set this. You've got to you got to set goals. I think with work, you've got to set goals with the team. If you've got a team, if you haven't, you've got to
mm.
set yourself and say, right,
Yeah,
what am I going to achieve? Like you did there, you said, I'm going to set by the end of the year, I need to be at this point and this point, and then work backwards from that.
yeah,
That's the key thing is work. Because setting goals, it's not if you set a goal and you go, I want to be at, I don't know, whatever it may be, but at this point in time, but then you work
mm,
backwards, you can't achieve it. Don't set yourself goals that you can't achieve either. It's kind of you want to push yourself, but at the
yeah,
same time, you've got to be a bit real with the goals.
yeah.
So you've got to obviously try and push yourself to get better results and better kind of outcomes, but got to be real as well, and they've got to be
Mm,
achievable. And we do this exercise every year. We're just doing it now with the team actually, so it's pretty fresh. We're
mhm,
doing a lot of this. We're just doing goal setting, but we have values to go against, so we know as our
mm,
values is what we're trying to achieve. And making sure as an individual like leaders of the teams that they're going to bring their goals and at the same time that should spill into a little bit of they've got the work goals, I've achieved them, that's a good thing for them to do. How does
mm,
that affect them in their personal life moving forward? And that's good as well because then that's
mm,
it's ticking both boxes.
mm.
And it's key you do that as well. It's not just
Yeah.
about work. I love what I do. It's the thing. I love what I do, so I live and breathe it because I love it.
Hmm.
At the same time, you've got to kind of get your home goals right. And I'll be honest with you, but they're not always right.
Mm,
Because usually you'll find work becomes the priority a lot of the time because you're going to make that's supporting your life and supporting your
hmm.
life type of thing. So everyone's, I think, if they're honest, that if people talk about work-life balance, even I struggle with that. I think that's quite a tough thing to do.
Hmm.
Uh, I struggle with that quite, and I know a few people I've spoken to struggle with that because it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to get right.
Mm,
Um, because if you're trying to grow a business and you're focused on growing a business, a lot of
mm,
your energy and effort and mindset goes into that. When you get to 5 o'clock on a night time, I don't switch off.
mm,
I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm thinking about work. When on a weekend, I'm thinking about work, even though I'm
mm.
with people, and that's quite one of the tough things. I know one of the things we're probably going to discuss later on is sacrifices and that type of thing
Yeah.
with things. But if I came out of that now, for example, that's probably the toughest part of everything for me is
Hmm.
the when you talk about sacrifices and growing a business. It's what's my biggest sacrifice would probably be around time
Mm.
with the family. It's time
Yeah.
because it's a difficult thing. And when I say time, I don't mean well, I've allocated this time on say a Friday to be with them. It's
Mm.
you being present when you're there. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is how do you make
Yeah.
sure you're present when you're there? So, for example, next week, I'm at Centre Parks with the
Mm.
kids and the wife, and it'll be an amazing trip and it'll be fantastic. But I have a I have a challenge, and when I go away on holiday, it probably takes me 7 days to kind of unhook a little bit from
Mm.
never unhook totally, but to definitely kind of come off that kind of because you're always thinking, you're always moving, you're always trying to get to the next thing and grow. To kind of sit back and relax and get into my relax
Mm.
mode. At least 7 days. So you got to learn to do that, and
Mm.
that's a tough thing because I haven't got that right yet. I'm trying to.
Yeah. I think
Anyone's,
everyone.
anyone's got any advice for me on that? That'd be amazing.
Well, I think everyone really, really struggles with that. And by the time this episode comes out, and for people listening, we're recording this on the 6th of December.
Yeah,
By this point, there will be an episode coming out with a guy called Bradley Plax, who was he's the co-founder of Mint 66, and I think he founded or co-founded Broadbean back in the day. But the topic of that podcast was pretty much exactly what you're talking about. And he doesn't like the term work-life balance. He
yeah,
likes the word work-life integration. And I challenged him loads on that. So when that comes out 19th of December, so again, by the time this comes out, people can listen to that one. But
yeah,
he talked at length about that. And I expressed to him that throughout my whole life, because I've only really my only real jobs in my adult life have only been in recruitment. I got my first
Yeah,
recruitment job as 20 years old and doing temps, and perm recruitment from 22, 23 years old. Uh, and on top of that, having ADHD, which is like just fucking all the time, your head's going a million miles an hour. Like I never used to go on holidays because I just found them to just be a complete waste of time. And I remember
yeah,
my first proper job when I was recruiting nurses, and they pulled me aside on like the 1st of December, and the sales director was like, "Have you taken any annual leave this year?" And I was like, "No." And he was
yeah.
like, "Well, you need to take some annual leave. Like you're just gonna go like." And I was like, "What's the
You've
point?
got
I'm
to
gonna
do
go
it.
on holiday somewhere and then just sit there about, oh, my nurse is gonna turn up to the hospital, and am I gonna get more commission? Like I'm young at the moment. I might as well put as many hours in it as possible. Now I'm like turning 30. Well, by the time this comes out, I'll be 31.
Mm.
Fuck me, do I appreciate holidays now? Like, fuck me. But it's still so hard to then just turn everything off and, like you say,
Oh
just
yeah,
be
you can.
there.
I think the one thing is, I don't know if you can. I think you've got to learn to adjust to give yourself some time. I don't. You run a business or you own a business. When you go on holiday, you still own and run a business. So you
Mm,
don't. You can't stop. But it's learning like somehow to detach yourself for a short period of time. So you spend quality time with
yes.
people, and I think that's the tough part. And
Mm,
sometimes you can do it, and sometimes I can't, and it's difficult depending on what you're working at the time because if you run a business, you're going to live and breathe it,
mm.
and it's
And you
on
should.
holiday. You should. It's if you're on a holiday, you don't go, well, I'm on holiday, so I'm not going to live and breathe it this next 2 weeks.
Mm,
But you can definitely get something in there that you still work. I still work when I'm on
mm,
holiday, but I look check my emails. I'd make any calls I got to make. I check in with the team. But it's that kind of space to try and really give yourself quality chunks of time with the
mm.
people you're there with because
Yeah.
that's really important. That's a difficult thing to get right. So it'd be interesting to listen to that
Yeah.
talk around that because that's a really interesting one.
Yeah, something he said, and it's given me a bit of a flashback actually to the first, I think it was the first or second time I ever went to IB from President's Club, and what Brad said about the integration was very similar to what you said there about like segmenting certain periods of time. So, say for example, you're going on holiday to Portugal and you're spending from 10 a.m. till 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the beach, and you're going to go and get a Mediterranean lunch with
Yeah,
family.
yeah,
During that time, you've set boundaries that you're not checking emails, you're not answering phone calls, but from 2 till 3, that's your period of time where you can quickly just check in on things, check in on the team, answer any calls, get back to any urgent, important tasks, and then it's
yeah,
shut. And then as long as you've got those boundaries that are set with the people that you're there, and
yeah,
you've kind of dealt with anything that is just absolutely pressing, then that way you have that period where you can be there. Like what were
yeah,
you just saying? You can be
yeah,
present because you've kind of dealt with those different types of things.
yeah, yeah,
I think that's yeah, because again, I wouldn't be able to recite word for word what he said, but he was kind of talking a little bit about that. And something I brought up with him as well that I worked with a client earlier in the year on a Monday. Every Monday, I'd go to his house in Greenwich. Sounds a bit dodgy when I say it like that, but his cousin owns a recruitment business in Ireland, and he set up working from home in London to do the London like fintech business, whatever.
yeah,
And he wanted some one-to-one coaching on just recruitment. So every single Monday, I would travel to, I think it was Charlton. It's like took me 2 hours to get there and 2 hours back. Which
yeah,
in hindsight, I wouldn't do that now because I'm just like, it's not really the greatest, whatever. But I found for me that by the time I kind of had my breakfast, and I needed to leave the house at 9 to be at his for like 11, and then I'd finish. My whole day had gone, and Mondays were my day to do admin and to do like setting up for the week, all the rest of it. And something that Brad said was, "What stops you from doing your goal setting, your admin on a Sunday?" And I was like, "Well, Sundays for me and my wife, or me and my friends and stuff like that." And he said, "So how long would it take you to sit there and like wipe your board behind you and go, cool, right, this is what I've achieved, etc." And I was like, "Usually like half an hour." And he was like, "So on a Sunday, you're telling me that you couldn't just quickly just check your calendar for the week and then set some period like some goals throughout the week and then just
yeah,
plan so that on Monday you don't have to spend any time thinking?" And I was like, fuck me, that's actually a really good point. So he
yeah,
was then explaining that's not balance, that's just integrating. It's like your work is your life is your work. It's
yeah.
just trying to integrate them two
Yeah.
together.
That's what it is. 100% agree with that. Definitely. It's the thing about that is it's which I struggle with. I think it's getting the habits to do it. It's
That's
creating
that's
them
what it
habits.
boils down to.
And it's like easy when you say this is what I must do, this is what I should do. But then, like you say, when I'm with my family and trying to enjoy time away and be present, it's not about because my wife will say you're not really here. It's something I'm like I'm there, but I'm not really there.
Yeah, you're not there.
No, it's not there. It's trying
Yeah.
to get that. It's trying to get that right, and I think that's quite a thing to do. But that's habits. You've got to create habits.
Mm.
And one thing I'm going to come back to on that is one thing I've changed around because I've had that for years. Is these last few years and this last year especially, building the right team is
Mm.
allowing us to do that a little, like a lot more. I think
Yeah.
getting great people. We've got great people anyhow, but then we've made some decisions about getting some heads of in place who are becoming like a really strong leadership team, and getting
Mm.
them in place is massively helping me do that as well.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's good. And like you said, like I said before, without from her home life, my wife understands massively
Mm.
about it. She gets it. She understands.
Hmm.
So she understands certain work. She understands work. You've got to do it. But I
Mm.
think I want to achieve is that ability to kind of have them segments of time where they are just for them.
Yeah.
And that's the bit. It'd be interesting to. There's something I'm doing at the minute with the SAS Academy, which is like it's buyback time.
Mm.
Um, Again, that's the same thing. It's how you buy your time back and how you
Yeah.
get that. Kind of all about kind of making sure you get the right. I think that get the right people around you and how do you
Mm.
manage your weeks and days better. Like you said, and then people have this mindset of a Sunday is it's a Sunday, you don't do it. But if you just spend an hour on a Sunday or 2 hours on a Sunday doing it, you buy your time back on a Monday. It's like we'll just do it that way. It's all just, it's just time. So as long
Yeah.
as you're getting the benefits that you need, then do it.
Mm. But it realistically goes back to what you said, and if we backtrack to what we said about like the first thing we talked about, which was adversity, and we said about setting goals.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a few coaches say setting goals is pointless, blah 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 blah. It's all about habits, and I'm like, yeah, cool, but like you're just trying to reinvent the wheel. Like a goal is important,
I
but
hope.
to achieve a goal, you need to build sustainable habits, and to
Yeah,
build sustainable
it
habits.
all comes part and parcel of that, doesn't it? But you still got to have a goal. I think you've got to have a goal to aim for. And then you can, then you create your habits around that, and make sure you achieve, make
Yeah,
sure you achieve it by them habits. But you've still got to have the goals. Really important for me
yeah,
personally, setting goals. And sometimes it might be just that month. There's some goals you set. You don't have to do
yeah.
it. Personally, I do. I try and set goals quarterly and annually. I
Mm,
don't. I do have goals like long-term goals, but I have like it's really an annual goal and then kind of quarterly ones. But sometimes you
mm,
need to have them. Depends how busy you are. You can have small milestones to say, it might be a daily goal if you need to, but
mm,
really I try and set my kind of my quarters more than anything else and look at my quarterly
mm.
goal and work towards that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just about to say, I mean, the goal could simply be getting the habit of or break X habit. Like, that's still a goal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still a goal. It's still an achievement. It doesn't have to be financially driven or anything. It's a goal. It could be anything. Like you said,
Mm,
my goal is to kind of, it's making sure when I'm there
mm.
with my family and the people I want to spend time with. But that's a goal that I think that's probably one of the most important goals.
Yeah.
Um, but that's, everyone has different goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before I want to ask you about something else in a second, I just want to touch one more thing on the sacrifices piece because I talk about this a lot with, especially with trainee recruiters and people getting into the industry, because since COVID, there's like every business, if they want to attract more people, and I do quotations for people listening here, they need to offer a work from home allowance, right? Now, for some businesses, if that doesn't work for you as a business owner, your pool of talent might be shorter.
Yeah.
However, you will attract the people you want to attract based on what your vision is, your values, etc., etc. My whole point here is when I was a trainee recruiter, when I first got into that, and when I first set my business up, and you could call that a trainee entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it. You said there about making sacrifices, right? You have to make these sacrifices, and for people doing recruitment. I remember I got told this on my very first day. The lady gave it, she was the operations director. She gave me my desk and said, "This desk is your business. That's your reputation. That's your business. Your
Yeah.
contract says 9 to 5,
Yeah.
but you're not here to do a 9 to 5. If you start any business in the world, you're going to be working outside of hours. We're not going to sit here and force you to do extra hours. But if you want to make something of yourself, you need to work really fucking hard. Your competition is also going to be working just as hard. So you're going to have to put some hours in. And the first few days of doing it, like it's learning on the job, making calls, being metaphorically kicked onto the floor and having to pick yourself back up again. It gets to 5:30 my first week. I was like, I just want to go home. I'm absolutely knackered.
Yeah.
But then as soon as I started to get into the flow of things and I was kind of a little bit more out of that learning phase and I'm in the graph phase, I sacrificed going out with friends. I sacrificed getting home and eating dinner with my family on the table. I sacrificed so many different things. And I feel like, and I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but I feel like I don't want to sit here and say the younger generation. I just feel like this next group of recruiters that have come in don't necessarily understand the sacrifice they have to make to not make it, but to get to that level of being a very successful recruiter or even or a successful businessman or woman, if you want to put it like that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a personality type as well, isn't it? You've got to be wanting
Mm.
to have the drive to become successful. I agree. If people want to be excel themselves, they're going to have to put themselves above and beyond. And if they do that, they get the rewards as well. So they've got to be able to do that themselves as well. So
Mm.
everyone's different on that. But yeah, I think it's working from home and the COVID thing obviously changed massively with everything
Mm.
that business did. But we have people that work from home, work in the office, and it works
Hmm.
because they're driven. They've set themselves goals and they've set themselves
Mm.
targets they want to achieve and they want to make themselves better. So we know it's not everyone, but most people here, they definitely do that. And you got
Hmm.
to. Yeah, I encourage that. It's great. It's fantastic. Push
Mm.
yourself. It's how you're going to get to the next level.
Mm.
Um, Make sure you reward as you go.
Mm.
Be honest with, be transparent. Make sure you can say no. Building a business is a team effort. It's not a singular
Mm.
person doing it. You might lead and but in reality, it's everyone's who's in that who's going to make it happen. Has to make
Mm.
it happen. But yeah, it's a tough one.
It is. I can't remember who said it on the podcast. I can't remember what guest it was, but they said you have to choose your sacrifices.
Yeah, you do. You have to choose. I mean, choosing you have this great one, but you have to choose what you want to,
Mm.
And when you're doing anything, and I think not just when you're trying to push yourself and excel in anything, you've got to have sacrifice, and you're going to lose time somewhere.
Hmm.
And like you said at the beginning of that, you said, I stopped going out with my friends as much and start doing that, and that happens as well. I think
Mm.
that's the nature of it. So I mean, I've circle of friends, but I have less than what I started with, if you like, because your focus becomes slightly different as you grow in a business. Your energy, your efforts, you're pushing towards growing the business, so your focus isn't the Thursday or Friday necessarily, or the Monday, Tuesday, meeting up with them on a. It's you're working, you're just
Mm.
pushing yourself, especially when you start. And to be fair, to a degree now, it's still doing that. It still happens. Stuff
Mm.
just like all the time. But I know early doors of a startup, really kind of startup phase,
Mm.
focus for the first 1 or 2 years, definitely not on going out as much. Still go out, still do it and
Mm.
stuff, obviously, but it's definitely less than what it is because you've got to focus on the business growth.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good one. And I remember that person actually now, it's Callum. He also said about pick your vices as well. And I think that's quite a powerful one as well. Like everyone's got their specific vice. Sometimes not the most healthy of vices, but yeah, picking your sacrifices and picking your vices is really, really important. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about before we move on to the final question when we first met, we talked a lot about the milestones that you achieved, and it kind of goes in very nicely to what you were talking about, goal setting and stuff. And something that you said that I've actually brought up quite a few times on the podcast now when I speak to founders, and I just remember your energy and the look on your face when you said about getting to that first 1 million. Is there anything about that? It's just like cool, like 2 mil, fantastic. But that first million,
That was for me. It was getting to that first million milestone. I mean, we're a bootstrap business, so we've not took
mm,
no VC. We took no VC money. We are bootstrapped. We are like blood, sweat, and tears, if you like, to push the
mm,
business forward constantly. That first million for me was an absolute epic kind of
mm,
milestone. And it's I don't know why, because but it's just that feeling of like you've hit that million kind of.
mm,
And for me, the million wasn't in the turnover; it was in the reoccurring. When you get past the million reoccurring, that for me was like, wow.
mm,
That means
mm,
next year, £1 million come before I start building the business even further. That means I can create more and this and do more jobs or whatever it may be. But that first million, that feeling of doing that was unbelievable. And we celebrated that as well. With
mm.
the team, we got the team together. We got them together. We celebrate things like that. You've got to celebrate that. But yeah, that's one of the best in business, without a doubt. One of the best kind of feelings I've had so far is hitting that first million.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that must be an absolutely amazing feeling. And I remember you saying that you obviously you just talked there about the sacrifices that you've had to make, but obviously there's loads of challenges that occur on the way to getting there. Like, what would you say was like one of the biggest challenges in the road, or maybe a big lesson that you learned on the way to doing that?
Um, Manage your cash flow effectively.
I hear that a lot.
Cash is the end of the day. You need the cash. Make sure you've got enough. You've got cash in the bank. Manage your cash effectively. spend it wisely when if you bootstraps, we're bootstraps, you spend it wisely, you don't waste. Uh,
Mm,
just make sure your cash flow is absolutely key, to get to that point. And make sure your team's right on that
mm,
journey as well. It's you got to get your team on board and get them pushing, and they did, and they really put everyone pulled together and makes it an amazing thing. But my number one thing for anything like that is definitely that, sacrificing things is like making sure you've got the cash flow. And I've
mm,
had to over the time I've borrowed, I've done whatever I need to do to get the cash flow to where
mm,
it needs to be. Because you've got to do it. You've got to work out how you kind of get it to that point. That was the early days of doing it, really. But you get to about when you get to £1 million reoccurring, you kind of, well, for me, I started thinking this is getting pretty serious. You've got to start thinking,
mm,
well, you got to make sure you've got you've got the plan for the next 6, 12 months. And we did. And that's one of
mm,
my biggest things, asking the directors and stuff in the business. I'm probably overthink that, but I've always got to make sure I've got enough cash flow all the time, because it's like always about
mm,
I've got to focus on the next 6, 12 months all the time. That's what my
mm,
plan was this. So you've got to keep doing that. You've got to keep building it. But the beauty with being a recurring model is that, yeah, it's not safer, but it's definitely
mm,
in the agents. When I first started in business, it was agency world. I used to build software and build like websites and things for clients, and they'd range from, I think our smallest, I mean, not smallest, but average small, 2,000, £3,000 contract to our biggest deal we ever got was over 1 million type of thing. And you kind of go, oh, that's crazy. But once that money's gone in the agency world and you've done that project,
mm.
that's gone.
Yeah.
You're looking for the next one. You're looking for the next one. The reoccurring model just really just floated my boat, really, from a business perspective, because it was like, you know
Mm,
what, that's building a real business there at that point.
yeah.
That million mark was just that extra, like, you've hit 1 million. Let's go for, and
Mm,
then two and three, and then you're building type of thing. So it's
mm,
and that's the journey we're on, is you're trying to get to that next milestone and keep building and keep building.
mm. Love that. Second last question before I move on to my last question. I asked somebody this, I think he was like my second or third guest, after we finished recording. But if you were to go back in time when you first set up this business as yourself now and could give your old self advice, what would be the first thing that you would say as some advice to your old self?
It's a very good question. What advice would I do it, make decisions faster, be honestly, probably take more risks.
Mm,
Uh, I took on so for the first, like, Kevin, for example, joined us, I think 7 years ago. I probably
mm,
should have done that 3 or 4 years earlier, and he's the sales director, so he made sure
mm,
this. Until that point, it was me selling. So it was me
mm.
selling. I was designer, I was selling, I was doing a bit of accounts. Because you do a bit of everything as you're building a business.
Yeah.
Probably take on the people quicker. And that's one thing I took on, like someone in accounts. So I took obviously Kevin on. He was like head of sales, and he smashed that and changed the business totally with sales.
Mm,
Like taking on the heads of quicker and doing that. I should have done that a lot sooner.
mm,
Um, I wish I'd done that sooner, but at the same time, you're managing cash flow, so it's a very difficult balance. But if I could go back, I'd definitely build a senior team quicker.
good advice, to be fair. Love it.
I just, but it's difficult, isn't it? Taking that. I was speaking to someone the other day, and there's two of them in the business, and they were saying, "Oh, we want to take someone on." They've been saying this for about a couple of years now.
Mm,
That step, all I'd say is that step is a risky step, but it does work, and it does.
yeah.
You've got to do it. It's difficult taking that first jump. Taking that next person on from yourself is
Mm,
like a difficult thing, isn't it? Because it's not, then you're not priority one anymore when it comes to pay. And it's like, oh, I'm last in the queue
yeah.
of all that. So it is what it is.
No, it's good advice, though, to be fair. So, as you know, final question I wrap things up with is following today's episode, how can people get 1% better in recruitment?
Build a better team. Get yourself a better team. Get yourself an awesome team. I've got a great team. I've built, I believe, as a team, and even now the team are building the team as well. So it's like
Mm,
it's going down it. Just build a great team. Build a great team. It's the business and is only about the people. It's about the
mm,
people. At the end of the day, you need to have the people in the business to make a really great team. I'd say definitely get get an amazing team around you, people you can trust who want to enjoy the journey as well and bring them with you on that journey and share that journey with them.
Mm.
I'd say trust your gut quicker, if I'm honest, because
Hmm.
that times I've been a bit reserved and things like that. Just enjoy the ride and chase the dream. That's what it's about.
Mm. Love that. Beautiful. Well, Adam, I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been a really, really nice, like where we started and where we finished. There's been so much value. I've learned loads myself. I think that you've added a tremendous amount of value. So thank you very much. And thank you for being so honest as well and just candid with the way that you spoke. I know sometimes talking about certain topics and stuff, some people find it quite difficult, but no, I really genuinely respect the honesty and all the advice that you've shared. As I always do, obviously with your business, what types of people, for people that are listening to this, what types of people should reach out to you? How do they reach out to you? All that type of stuff.
LinkedIn is probably the best thing. Get me on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to reach out and discuss anything, if it's business related or if it's around like the challenges of anything, even if it's around like they've gone through similar things or whatever it
Mm,
may be, just reach out. I think conversations are always good to have. So yeah, I'm more than happy to speak to anyone.
wonderful. Awesome stuff.
I
Well, thank you very
think
much.
it's nice,
Go
I
on.
think it's nice to speak to them as well. To be fair, so
Mm.
like, it works both ways. But yeah.
Absolutely, mate. Well, again, thank you very much. And for anyone that's got this far, thank you very much for listening, watching. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment as well. It helps the algorithm, apparently. Spotify and Apple Podcasts, we're on there. And the newsletter, where we're recording this on the 6th of December, we're approaching 1,100 subscribers on the newsletter. So subscribe to there, because if you listen to this episode, but maybe you missed the last one or whatever, you get all the lowdown on that as well. So thank you very much for everyone. And until next time.